Ruslan. Patreon exclusive.
You know, I have 6 kids, and so ranging from 20 all the way down to a newborn. And I've been wondering about this, like even talking with my wife about how we acted as kids versus how we let our kids act now, right? Like, I have a pretty long driveway, and even when my 9-year-old wants to go outside, I'm like, okay, but you can only go, you know, this far. I have to be able to see you at all times, that kind of thing. When I was in 3rd grade, I would ride my bike an hour away. My parents wouldn't know where I was until I came home at dark.
Yeah, we were doing some wild stuff when we were younger, bro.
What's the difference now, though? Like, are we more aware, which sort of makes us overinformed, paranoid, worried, or are people progressively getting worse because of the access to excess that you always talk about, which is in the form of, you know, exploitation of younger people via the internet?
You're kind of hinting at the maps video that I just did with regarding
like just the
maps
is there an increase of those types of people so that we have to be so worried, or are we more aware, or is it in between?
You know what, that's a great question. So let me just first say this and clear this up with regards to that maps video. So that video was shot a while ago. 2 things I found out. One, the person, the professor who did that interview and did that research on maps, and you guys could fill in the blank, right? He has since been suspended from Old Dominion University. And 2, the LGBTQ community does not embrace that position. So I want to make sure that that's not how we're framing it, and that's not how that was framed, because I think the outrage in the chat like connected it all, and I think the LGBTQ community has been very intentional to say, like we're not on this. This is next level debauchery. We are not this. People should be protected. Young people should be protected. So I want to make those 2 distinguishing features. And I'm not saying like there's a unified community that stepped up and like we as the people from this, but generally speaking. Now, are there more people out there that are being so open-minded and using phrases like empathy and tolerance that their brain is falling out and they're just doing stupid stuff? Yes, I would say that is the leftist, like radical, goofy elitism that is, I think, permeating the university side of things, where, you know, if you say gender's a fact, that's considered hate speech. If you right, like you gotta just be so over the top. I think that is real. However, I think from a macro standpoint, people are coming together and pushing back on that and saying, nah, like, you can't say Dave Chappelle used white privilege. Like, that sounds stupid, right? Like, you can't call everything phobic. You can't do that, right? Like, I think there is some pushback happening from a cultural standpoint that I think is good. In terms of how we grow up versus how my kids are gonna grow up, and I have a 7-year-old, my 5-year-old niece lives with us, and I have a 7-month-old, and I do think it's different, and this is why, because I do think that technology has made the world way smaller, and we can see things happening that gives us just way more access to information that we've just never had this much information. So we know about the 1 in a million chance that somebody gets snatched up walking to the park. Like, we hear about that stuff more frequently, and that stuff was happening when we were growing up. I just think now technology has just given us so much information that now we're at a heightened sense of alert. And but here's the kicker to this. I don't think we were any more safe when we were younger, right? I think if anything, we were less safe because we didn't have stuff like GPS tracking on phones, or the little Apple thing that you could slide into your kid's backpack now, right? That could track the GPS. We didn't have as much access to just call authorities if something went down. I think we were more at danger when we were younger. I just think our parents just like assumed everything was peaches without really factoring the risk. And in my case, latchkey kid, I got into a lot of trouble. I got arrested at the age of 11. I lost my virginity super young. I got sexually assaulted. Like, I was in a lot of trouble doing a lot of really stupid, debaucherous thing before I was even a teenager. So I don't think that like we grew up in this utopia and the society has gotten worse and evil. I think it's just more amplified. And I think anyone nowadays, because of social media, can have a voice and people would entertain that voice. You'll always find some weird pocket of Twitter land, of some goofy side, and they'll entertain it, and then they'll amplify it, and I think it'll seem bigger than it is. And I think in the case of maps, it is that. I don't think there's bro, after that video came out, I got emails from people that were like, hey, I did this as a child to another child, and this is not okay, and there's no way that you can ever justify this. Like, I got some wild emails from people that were like, no, absolutely not, this is never okay, right? That have gone down and did some really dark stuff. Which I was like, wow, I was like, man, that's crazy that they emailed me about it, because they watched my video, I guess. So I think media has made things more accessible. I think generally speaking, this is macro, right? So yes, there's gonna be some weirdo somewhere that's gonna say something really over the top. Generally speaking, society is less violent, murder is down, right? All of those things where crimes are being committed against other people, generally speaking, are down, which is good. Right? Starvation is down, that sort of thing, disease, those things are down. However, depression, anxiety, suicide, self-inflicted harm is up. So my opinion is, I think that's where we probably should be paying a bit more attention, is really tuning in. Not to say that we should be letting our kids just run around the neighborhood carefree. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, we probably should be a bit more in tune with where they are emotionally. How soon do we let them get on Instagram and TikTok? How soon do they get a smartphone? There's a whole campaign called Wait Till 8th, and it's saying like kids shouldn't have smartphones till at least 8th grade. That would be my assessment, just based on kind of like the raw numbers. But you're always gonna have some wild people out there making some wild statements. You know what I mean? So, what do you think? Like, do you think things are better now, macro sense, or do you think it's more dangerous?
I think we just always, especially as Christians, we always think in extremes. Like it's like all the way this or all the way that. And I think I do think that there's no way that we can pretend that the P word, being as available as it is, hasn't worsened like that crowd of people, like that it hasn't like created another generational
of distortion because of how exposed they are to it. That's
because there's only so far, like it's addiction, right? So it's like people supposedly, like, if you want to say, pot is the gateway, then it's like eventually some of those people plateau at like heroin or something, right? Like, I'm not saying that's true for everyone who participates in the P word, or watching it or looking at it. I'm saying, like, to me, there's no way that we can't pretend that it's got to increase to that.
Yeah, I would say, to add to your point, I would say yes, and I think that is exemplified in lower marriage rates and lower birth rates, which is happening. Right? Like, in order for our society and our civilization to continue growing, people have to keep having at least 2 kids per household right? Just to sustain growth, right? To grow, you got to have more than 2 kids per household. And so what's happening is, yes, absolutely. And I think there's a tie into that, and there's a tie into like wild leftist loony thinking that sees the population decreasing, which is wild. And so this is my opinion. I look at that and I go, great. The only people that are going to be having kids 20, 30, 40 years from now is folks that are of faith, folks that grew up wanting to be fruitful and multiply.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
you know what I mean? And so I'm like, yeah, bring it on. What is right? Because everybody's going to go to like the last days, and like, we don't know when the last days are. Like stop the cap. You don't know if we're in the last days. That could be 500 years from now. That could be 100 years from now.
People in the Bible thought it was time.
They thought it was in their time, right? So if we're reading Matthew 24:25, you're commanded to live a specific way per Matthew 25, the rest of the New Testament. Be fruitful, multiply, all that. So if we're thinking about it from that perspective, then I think 50 years from now, we become way more Christian, and I think society looks different. I mean, hey, it's possible that Roe v. Wade may get overturned right now, right? Which is like 10 years ago, that wasn't a possibility. Right. So that's even crazy, like that's even a thing. Right. So I think it's actually going to go the other way in terms of what's normative in culture. I think what we have to be on guard for, and this is just my opinion, is as followers of Jesus, we have to not be elitist in being right on these issues. because I think that turns people off. Because if we're talking about persuading people, you persuade people through humility, through kindness, through love, through patience, not through elitism and, ha, you stupid idiots, we have all the answers, you dumb, right? I don't think that's the tone that's needed from Christians if we're thinking generationally and legacy-wise.
Well, you've already seen secular people step in and make a dent, even the last couple of years. I think at least I would say the last 18 months, where like that industry is getting crushed by credit card companies. They're not allowing their certain brands to be represented in that industry. So it's like, I mean, that alone, if that's going to hit their dollars, that's where it hits. And like, that's coming from a secular side. Like,
absolutely.
Because Christians want to come at the moral side, but you got to hit, you're starting in college and trying to expect people to have a college level of faith when they've never even crossed over salvation. So that's a whole other issue.
Right.
Just
there's entire non-Christian movements and nonprofits looking at exemplifying the Christian tenets of not being addicted to PORN, not being weighed down by debt, not right. There's so many things that are happening. Being married before you have children, right? The Brookings Institute came out and said the number one way, 98% of people who do these three things break out of poverty and won't stay in generational poverty, which is wait until, or graduate high school is number one, wait until you're at least 21 to get married, and get married before you have kids. If you do those three things, you are 98% likely to break out of poverty, the cycle of poverty, right? Which are all those? Those are all biblical things, right? Like be faithful to your education and show up and be faithful to what God's put in front of you, right? Wait till you get married before you have kids, and probably shouldn't get married at 17 years old. You probably should be a little wiser. Wait till you're 20, at least 21 to get married, and then have kids after you get married. Right? These are all, but these are the values that are being pushed in the secular side of things. So I think you're spot on.
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Yo, thank you so much for making it through this video. We have a free 3-day Master YouTube Live Challenge coming up. The link is in description. If you're an expert, thought leader, entrepreneur, aspiring YouTuber, make sure to sign up for that, and I will see you on the next video.